Rutgers and resolve to learn all that we can.
Bruce Hall is the CEO and president of Eureka Inventing, true global thought leaders in innovation since 1986. Eureka Inventing is a growth strategy and innovation consultancy, having completed innovation projects with over 2,000 engagements and tested more than 27,000 ideas. They have worked with Disney, Coca-Cola, American Express, Procter Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Toyota, and others. The mission of the firm is to deliver the world's most reliable systems for driving substantial growth and disruptive innovation for clients. They focus on unlocking the mystery behind innovation success so organizations can make major leaps with their capabilities, results, and culture. Bruce leads this firm and is proud that they do the real work alongside their clients to achieve meaningful and sustainable success. Bruce has been the chief marketing officer for 2 venture capital startups in the biotech and healthcare spaces. He's also held senior marketing positions at Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, and Novartis. Bruce earned his bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Maine and an MBA from the University of Massachusetts at Lowell. And Bruce, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, Margaret, and I appreciate yourself and Rutgers University in inviting me to do that. I'm honored with such a fine university as Rutgers is. And thank you everybody for attending. And my hope is when I join webinars is you walk away with at least 5 practical approaches that you can put in place immediately to improve your innovation success. What really jazzes me up and the folks at Eureka Inventing is coaching and helping people achieve things that they thought was impossible. In fact, we have a saying, now that we know something's impossible, let's get to work. And that's what we do at Eureka Inventing, and we love to do it. Eureka Inventing is powered by something called innovation engineering. So it's kind of the intel inside. In fact, there's a book that came out fairly recently called Driving Eureka, which outlines everything about innovation engineering. I think there's an audio version as well. And it's a book that can communicate the principles and systems of innovation engineering that drive our success with our clients. As Margaret mentioned, it's quite a pedigree, over 700 clients, 2,000 engagements, over 100,000 data points. And we use data to develop these tools. We don't just come up with tools as a guru might. We use real data to prove that they're actually going to make a difference in the process. It's our 35th year, and in fact, we're on version 11.0 of Eureka Inventing because we believe in continuous improvement, as you should if you're a systems thinker. We've been studied by Stanford, other universities, the US Commerce Department, and we're quite proud of the fact that the innovation engineering curriculum is actually in 7 major universities in the United States for their curriculum for the degree programs in innovation. So there's a lot of credential and foundation to this work, and I'd like to share it with you for a few minutes. So of course we do product innovation, and many people think in terms of product innovation, packaged goods, right? CPG products. I wanted to share an example of the impact of innovation engineering. So we had an objective from a client, they happened to be in Canada, to figure out how to sell more fish to millennials. Because a lot of people, particularly millennials, don't like to cook fish. They get poor results, they're a little scared of doing it. So in 6 months, we developed, through innovation engineering, 3 breakthrough and patented inventions for a new way, a breakthrough way to cook fish. Frozen delicious in under 12 minutes. And there's a number of different varieties. Tremendous success, won a number of awards. And it shows within a reasonable amount of time, you can cut through the clutter, deliver on a very challenging objective, and get results if you use the right system, right? The other side of the equation is system and service innovation. In 2 projects recently, I'm sure there's Rutgers folks on the line, and thank you for attending. We recently had the opportunity and the honor, quite frankly, to work on 2 different engagements. One was with the Airborne Hazards and Burn Pits Center of Excellence. which is part of the Veterans Administration. This is at Rutgers. They are the experts on how to address burn pit respiratory issues with our veterans that came back from the Middle East. They had a charge from the White House to actually urgently develop innovative solutions to diagnose and treat these war veterans, because the ailments that they were coming back with, very unfortunately, were causing serious issues, and there needed to be more guidance nationwide on how to treat them. They had tried many times to figure it out. It's been very difficult to get people to agree and drive to a consensus. So using innovation engineering tools, we helped drive to a consensus with key thought leaders, and the results were published in a medical journal. And obviously big results in terms of impacting how health professionals can treat veterans. And again, it was an honor to help our veterans who we owe so much to. On the other side of Rutgers, in the Cancer Institute in New Jersey, one of the top 10 cancer institutes in the country, they urgently needed improved systems on how to increase enrollment in their clinical trials. So which clinical trials should they pursue, given their objectives, given the need to have success with those trials? Obviously, it provides better health outcomes and better return on investment for those that are funding the Cancer Institute. So again, using systems thinking, we developed a new system for decision-making, improved problem solving for better results. And in fact, they're beta testing all of these new approaches and tools to drive, again, to a higher ROI for the organization, which of course leads to increased funding. In both cases, systems thinking made the difference to solve the problem, get to the desired result, get alignment and consensus on moving it forward and delivering for it. So systems projects, which people often don't think of in terms of innovation, actually are innovation. Sometimes the biggest opportunity you have in any organization is in fact a systems issue inside the company. It's not necessarily a better product or service coming in the front end, which is certainly innovation and sometimes needed. But very often there's a system issue inside the company that's getting in the way of you getting superior results. Today, you're going to learn new systems from innovation engineering to create, communicate, and commercialize meaningfully unique ideas. Meaningfully unique ideas. So first, we ask CEOs, what's the barrier to innovation in their companies? Why not go to the top? 75 CEOs of Fortune 500 firms. What they came back with was no alignment on priorities, poor systems, and lack of cooperation. What is not there, interestingly enough, is they didn't come back with, we need big new ideas, which is further down the list, right? They wanted better alignment, better systems, and better cooperation inside the organization. And this is often true. And it requires a new approach to systems and thinking about how to solve for it, right? So an innovation system could obviously address a lot of these needs that the CEOs had prioritized, right? So what is the secret to innovation acceleration through systems? If systems are needed, what's the secret to innovation success, right? It is systems that enable employees to be great. How often do we dream of an environment, a culture, a system that really taps into those wonderful reasons and aspirations you had when you first came into your career? No one, typically, from what I hear, signs up and goes into engineering or business or finance or HR with the aspiration to do things the same old way consistently and maintain the status quo, right? We need to tap into our employees with better systems and approaches that enables them to be great, to live what they aspire their career to be, and they can have a much bigger impact on the results, and they'll have a higher satisfaction. Very often, we hear back one of the biggest benefits of systems and innovation engineering, once deployed, is that we help them make work fun again. Isn't that the ultimate benefit, right? When people are having more fun and they're realizing and satisfying their aspirations for their career, we all know what happens. You get better results. So we need to enable them to get those better results. So how do we think about business results when we think about innovation systems, right? Well, most importantly, the greater the confidence in the innovation system, the higher percentage of those companies that will have above average profits. Think about that. If you have a system and people have confidence in it, the actual results are far greater for most of those companies. Tremendous. So you might ask, why aren't more companies pursuing systems, right? Why don't we have more companies that have strong innovation systems they're confident in? The number one reason is they don't know how to do it. And they need coaching and specific tools and methodologies that have been proven to work. And one of the other reasons why they don't is they typically will stop once a new program has been added to their process. If they don't see results fairly quickly, and you've probably all experienced this over the years, that if it doesn't get results quickly or almost immediately, often you'll go on to another program, right? We call that program du jour. And people will often ask, well, the companies that are successful, Bruce, what are they doing different from those companies that don't have success when they try to bring out a new system, such as innovation engineering? They don't stop. The ones that have success, are you ready for this? Don't stop. They keep going, right? They keep going. That is the difference between those companies that develop a new system and create culture change and those that don't. So importantly, let's talk about creation of meaningfully unique ideas. So I talked about create, communicate, commercialize is what I'm going to communicate. The first one's create. So how do we create meaningfully unique ideas? Nothing is more important than true alignment on the mission up front. Nothing is more important. We happen to use a blue card, and it outlines the narrative on why the mission's important, the mission and the strategic inclusions and exclusions on the project, and the areas for the team to explore. This is discussed at a deep level with the team. We actually want senior management to participate in the conversation, and we even want the key participants and stakeholders to sign it. So then when the team embarks on the project, they have complete confidence of what they need to go do, kind of like the commander's intent in the military. They should not have to go back to senior management in the middle of it to ask a question, because the blue card should have all that information on it. Alignment drives success. There's a direct correlation between those two things. There's nothing worse than getting further down in a project and realizing that a senior leader had a different intent for the project. It's frustrating, it's demotivating, and unfortunately, too many of us have probably experienced it. So when we're focused on a disruptive innovation, I've used this term meaningfully unique, right? It requires a relentless focus on meaningfully unique ideas to deliver disruptive innovation. So something that's meaningful, which meaningful, purposeful, valuable, significant. So it's relevant to your target audience. They find value in it. Second, it must be unique. It must be novel, unusual, provocative, unexpected. It's very easy to do each one of these on its own. Deliver something that's relevant and meaningful, but it's not new and different. Fail, right? A lot of companies produce these every day. Do something novel, unusual, but it's not meaningful to your target audience. Likely that fails, right? We need to do both of them at the same time. And that's the secret to success. In fact, if you look at the drivers of meaningful uniqueness, the highest number of any attribute of a new innovation is if it's new and different. So said another way, 58% of the products that survive 3 years, and 3 years is typically the bar for success. If it survives 3 years, it's successful, typically based on the data. 58% of them are unique. They are new and different. So one of the biggest mistakes that's made in innovation processes is people focus on ideas that are way too close in. You have to push it a lot further out as a starting point, because if it's not unique, your odds of success go down dramatically. If it's not unique, your odds of success go down dramatically. So it's critical to push new and different at the beginning of the process, and then have a way to bring it back and make sure it's meaningful, which I'll talk about. In fact, we have a saying, if you're not unique, you better be cheap, right? We know this. In fact, if you're not meaningfully unique, you better be cheap. If you're not going to deliver something that's novel and meaningful to your target audience, we all know from past experience, you better be ready to discount and compete based on price, right? And I'd love to hear from folks informally in the chat if you've experienced this and you're currently experiencing this. It is very difficult to get out of that box if you're competing based on price and discounting. It doesn't matter the category, it doesn't matter the product or service. It's very difficult to get out of that box. So we must focus on doing something meaningfully unique versus something that's the same old thing. Meaningful uniqueness drives word of mouth or free advertising. Even large brands at Procter Gamble drive a lot of their business through word of mouth. How do you get word of mouth passed around? Advertising, right? It's so people, how do you drive people to tell more people? The way to do that, of course, is to deliver something that's truly meaningfully unique. I would bet, like me, you probably don't tell your friends about a restaurant down the street that has salt and pepper every day, right? I say that in jest, right? But if a restaurant down the street has an amazing new dish that is you've never seen before, and it's out of this world, you're likely to tell somebody about it, right? Kind of a silly example, but let's not focus on whether management is giving you enough money for advertising, or if you're an R&D, that you need additional funds to drive a specific process or issue. Let's focus on the fact that everything that comes out the door needs to be meaningfully unique. And even if you don't spend a lot on advertising and marketing, you will get superior results. So I was just reading an article on LinkedIn that talked about CMOs not adequately being funded by corporations. And my first thought when I read it was, there's no time for whining. The key is to do those things within your control and have a system and a process to do things that are truly meaningfully unique. And then if you spend just a little bit of advertising or marketing, or very little at all in some cases, you're likely to get a vastly superior result. So that's something we can control, and we have the ability to do that moving forward. This is a very powerful concept, and R&D, marketing, market research, it doesn't matter what function you're in your company, you can all play a role in making sure you do something meaningfully unique. So let's move from this hit or miss approach to brainstorming and innovation to a reliable formula and system. So being math geeks, we turned it into a really cool formula. Meaningfully unique ideas are developed through stimulus mining to drive bigger ideas to the power of diversity of thinking divided by driving out fear to make them possible. Got it? I'll explain, right? So most importantly, this approach, our research over all those clients and data points shows that you get 6 times higher quantity of ideas and 2.5 times in quality measured by persuasion. The productivity of this with your team is off the charts. Diversity is derived. When we say diversity of thinking, obviously the diversity of your teams is extremely important, extremely important. And I'm sure you have diverse teams. We also use tools and exercises. We over 100 different exercises and tools at Eureka Inventing to utilize with the team to exponentially increase the number of ideas developed. Stimulus.
Bruce, can I interrupt with a quick question for you?
Sure, absolutely.
I think this is something that universally our audience would want to know. How do you measure meaningfully unique? Boy, I can't even say it, let alone measure it. But so that you know how you've achieved it in your own examples.
Thank you, Margaret. It's a great question, and I'm glad it was asked. I appreciate that. It won't surprise you that we use a blend of purchase intent or the appeal of your idea. So if you do any type of quantitative research, we use your purchase intent or the appeal of your idea to customers and whether they would buy it, their interest in buying it. And we use how new and different it is. So traditional research will only look at, is your customer open to buy, or what's the purchase intent interest of your customer to buy your product? Anyone in packaged goods that's out there knows that that's typically on a 5-point scale. And they'll look at the top 2 boxes to determine the purchase intent of your product. Other categories, you might just do a scale 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, where you're asking for the purchase intent, right? And if you only look at purchase intent, it is an inaccurate measure of the potential of a concept, given that new and different and uniqueness is so important. So we use a blend of 60% of the purchase intent or the interest in your customer score, and 40% uniqueness. So we use a blend of those two, which is a much better measure of the potential of the idea in the marketplace. And one last point, if you only look at purchase intent, very often people will say, sure, I'll buy that. That sounds good. That's something that I can use. And often you'll get a false positive score because uniqueness and whether it was new and different wasn't measured. So you can get a false positive if you don't include uniqueness as part of your 60-40 blend to calculate meaningful uniqueness. So meaningful unique ideas, I talked about diversity of thinking. Now I'll talk about stimulus mining to inspire bigger ideas. We encourage and practice with innovation engineering that prior to an inventing session, we preload the inventing session by doing mining in 6 different areas. And quite honestly, you set yourself up for incredible success. So we actually create a PowerPoint presentation. We might assign each of these 6 areas to a different person on the team, and they come back with a number of ideas, the more new and different, the better, to share with the team. So there's 6 different areas just very quickly. Classic mining, of course, which is important, very important. Market mining, what's the competition doing? What are people doing solving similar problems as mine? Insight mining, consumer insights. Companies tend to do this, whether it's consumer or customer in a B2B environment. We also push for stimulus areas that can push the leap for bigger disruptive ideas. Wisdom mining on the far left. There would be academic research, Googling for experts and speakers and podcasts on a topic. Patent mining, where we look at patents in the category of people solving similar problems. And yes, marketing people, market research people can search for patents and bring them to an inventing session. Anything that's patented by nature has to be new and different. So those ideas and that stimulus are unique by nature, like I said. So on the far right, we also do future mining, which is trends and things that are coming into the future, as well as unrelated mining, which we just throw out some zingers that are completely unrelated to the challenge. A lot of times those zingers in the brainstorming session don't produce anything, but once in a while, something that's completely unrelated can produce a blockbuster, a real breakthrough or disruptive innovation. So we do that stimulus mining, and we do the inventing session with the stimulus and the diversity. And then, of course, it's really important to take that idea from the heads of the people in the room and make it real. Too often, you may have experienced this. You'll create a bullet point list on the whiteboard or on your computer on the screen, and that becomes the output from the session. I will tell you, and I cannot reinforce enough, that those are not ideas. Those are bullet points. And if you're like most organizations, it goes into the file and you may look at it again down the road, but no one is going to take action from a bullet point list. If I stress anything today, if you take away anything from this presentation, is a bullet point list is not going to inspire anybody to do anything most of the time. There's exceptions to every rule, right? What we need to do is we need a concept structure that drives success, right? We happen to use what we call, it's our infamous yellow card, where we outline from a customer's perspective, as soon as the idea comes up, the insight, the problem, the benefit promise we're going to give to customers or consumers, and the proof or reason to believe we can deliver the promise. In one day, with the right tools and stimulus, we can develop 150 to 250 of these. So, and our research shows that quantity breeds quality of ideas. You can't say we need the perfect solution for X and narrowly focus on that one solution thinking you're going to come up with a breakthrough idea. The research shows over the years, you have to develop a lot of ideas, and that's the path to get a few breakthrough disruptive innovations to move forward with. So the discipline of this makes a huge difference. In fact, the data shows a 235% improvement in marketing effectiveness or odds of success when you outline your idea with a meaningful, unique benefit promise and product service proof, as in the yellow card. So the discipline to make it a complete idea, even though the first time you write the yellow card in the inventing session, it could be ugly, right? But then you write it again and you write it again. And it's that process that turns it into something that is really powerful, but the discipline makes a big difference for ultimate success. So I'd like to share an example. So how does this work? So if you're a medical device company and you're trying to solve neck pain, right? You might send your team out to do some stimulus mining. Let's say you're going to have an inventing session. And you do stimulus mining, and for the sake of the conversation and being simplistic, you come back with some wisdom mining to show that the optimal way for neck pain to be relieved is massages. Okay, we can do massages. Patent mining, you realize there's a number of patents on forced air to provide that massaging impact, but it doesn't appear like it's marketed today, right? Then you do insight mining, consumer insights. And like most adults, what they're saying is they can't take the time out of the day to get frequent massages. I can't stop to do it. So you're going to have to figure that out, because that's the insight to your treasured customer. And lastly, future mining. People are on the computer more and more. They get stiffness in the neck, and they want to move more, right? As soon as they're done the computer at the end of the day, they don't want to have a massage. They want to get moving, right? Can everybody relate to that with all this Zoom and such? You want to get moving and do something completely different. So that's your stimulus. You use an exercise, one of ours is called 666 in jest, and you take those different pieces of stimulus and you smash them together to see if you can come up with an idea. Let's say you have a big Eureka and your team develops the innovation on the right? So this is obviously the ultimate solution for this challenge. So you have a gentleman, and there's a tube, right, from his feet, and he blows air. As he walks, a bladder system blows air through the tube up to his neck to massage his neck. So, got it, right? That's the solution. So I'd like to ask the group in a poll, how confident are you? How confident are you with your current innovation system? Would you be able to learn and pivot and turn this into a meaningfully unique innovation to address neck pain with a medical device.
All right, we have no one who's totally confident. We still have a few people answering, so we'll give it a few more seconds.
Sure. Thank you, Margaret.
But I'm not sure it's gonna fill anything in totally confident.
We need a name
on.
for this guy. If anybody has a good name in the chat session for this this guy
I'm
with
gonna share the results for everyone.
Okay, so we have about 78% are neutral or below, right? 21% somewhat confident. That's good. That's good, and nobody that's totally confident. So there's a lot. Not sure we could make an attempt at that, and lacking confidence. Thank you. Do I hit share?
That should have the poll should have gone away for you. Is it?
All right.
Yeah, there you go. You should be able to see your slides.
Okay, great. So obviously, if we know from past experience that innovations aren't born the moment of this breakthrough Eureka, right? And it takes a lot of heavy lifting from the point where someone has an idea to the point where they're able to turn it into something that's truly meaningfully unique. Would it not make sense that we need a system, a proven system, to take an idea from this moment of divine intervention to turn it into something that'll address the objective for the company? A lot of the times, of course, if you don't see it immediately, you'd probably get some laughs, right? People would think it's silly. However, and I promise you, having been doing this for years, that an idea such as this, with the right process moving forward, can turn into something absolutely brilliant and disruptive in the marketplace, because you started with something that was so new and different. There were some laughs, right? There were some jokes, and then you have something that's worth pursuing. But obviously, what we do, let's say, for example, you took that to a yellow card as a team, right? And you wrote out the full concept. Now, this, of course, would be the second or third version of the concept. It wouldn't be the original concept, because the first one would be a little ugly, right? But the idea would be there. The nugget of this idea, maybe a little sketch, would be rough. But when you write out the full concept, what do you think happens when you share this with other team members, colleagues, and in the organization as a way to get support to explore it further? The odds go up. Even if they think it's still a little silly, if they know, okay, I get the whole idea, I get your vision. And when you put your vision out there and you put your equity on the line by writing out a full yellow card, others will respond in a much greater, more positive fashion. They will take you more seriously, because they will think, wow, if you went to that extent and wrote this idea out, maybe we should explore it, okay? So that discipline makes a huge difference moving forward. Let's talk about communicating meaningfully unique ideas. Communication is the bridge between create and commercialize. Your ability to communicate the ideas to each other accurately and clearly is incredibly important. It's even more important since we're often not even in the same place anymore, right? So it is really important. You need others to understand your idea as you do. You don't want it to get lost. You want them to see the same idea and be able to evaluate it as you do. So documenting it with a yellow card increases your odds of success dramatically. In fact, think of it as the first and cheapest prototype. I wonder if any of you have ever thought of a written concept of your idea as being a prototype, but that's exactly what it is. It's the first and cheapest prototype. Very often people want to go build it or start doing the development on a bench to develop something before you have a yellow card or written concept of the product. I contend if you can't put it into words, you don't know what it is. So you need to be able to put it into words. You know, what's the news headline? Who's the customer? What problem are you solving? Promise and proof. So it's incredibly important to do that for most other people and support. When we have these yellow cards, we have something we call questions for thinking deeper, right? On innovation. These are 20 questions. You can take your yellow card, you can go through the 20 questions, and these are based on data and our experience over many, many years as a way to answer the questions and then go back to the yellow card concept and improve it significantly. Typically, we see these types of increases in concept score as a result of going through the 20 questions.
Here's a quick question for you. I was
Sure.
wondering if these tools that help develop the meaningfully unique ideas will be available to the folks participating in today's webinar.
Great question. Yes, they will. The blue card, the yellow card, and the 20 questions, if you email me, and from past experience, it's really important to do a short kind of training and coaching session with you or your team. And I will provide those 3 tools, and I'll give you some specific instructions, and you can start utilizing these immediately. Thanks for the question, Margaret.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Commercialize meaningful, unique ideas. So we talked about create, communicate, now commercialize. So once you have the yellow card, and what do you do to problem solve it and address the key issues to bring it forward? Interestingly enough, we worked with a Fortune 20 company, obviously quite large, and we looked at a large set of ideas, and we looked at them. What was the initial proposal that was approved in terms of valuation, and what was the end result when it came out of development? On average, the projects lost 50% of their value through the development approach. So the current system of the gate system, where there's a lot of compromises in order to meet the timeline or the cost of goods, the ideas are being diluted down. And you can imagine if that original proposal was made at 50% of the size, it probably wouldn't have gone on to the development process, right? So we need a better way in terms of a mindset and approach to problem solve. The current approach, of course, is too slow, and it's way too risky because we're not addressing the few key issues. We call them death threats, to be dramatic, right? They're addressing a lot of issues, but not necessarily the key few issues, and it's slow. The new way of working, increasing speed of learning and decreasing risk. And focusing on those few critical issues or death threats that will matter. Most issues don't matter, right? We all know from innovation, there's a few key issues. If you address those successfully, you're going to have greater success. There's a lot of issues that become static and are not necessarily in need of research. They're things that you have to do at some point, but they're not risks. So I talked about stimulus mining and diversity. So in commercialization, let's talk about driving out fear to make them possible. Immediately when we develop a concept, a yellow card, we want to start talking about what are those few critical issues or death threats. Immediately. The longer you wait, the less likely you're ever going to do it, and the courage is lost within the group. So one of the real issues with innovation is people brainstorm, they develop a list of things, and they put it on the shelf, and they eventually come together 3 or 4 weeks later. Can anybody relate to this, right? I was part of it for years in my corporate career. If you start working on those few key issues immediately, with rapid learning cycles, plan, do, study, act, you're a lot more successful, right? And the key is speed. So we love to run cycles once a week, twice a week, where you're doing experiments and you're learning against those few key things that make all the difference. Importantly, it doesn't work to use the traditional consumer research or market research techniques in an organization at that rate of speed. We need innovation tools, overnight concept testing, qualitative you can put together in 24 hours. AI research, right? We have the ability to do AI research where you can develop insights across social media on a specific category or product or brand. These tools are emerging quickly, as we all know, very quickly. And so the research techniques need to be rapid cycle, low cost, fast, to match the rapid learning cycle approach. So as I stated, the current world, proper and mature, a lot of studying and not a lot of action, right? This is something that organizations, unfortunately, are good at, right? A lot of studying and you don't take action to really learn. It's expensive and slow. The new world for breakout innovation is we must get smarter as fast as we possibly can. The key is to learn faster, and we call it fail fast, fail cheap. Plan, do, study, act in cycles of learning. Faster cycle time increases speed. So plan, what is the metric you're trying to achieve? If you're trying to show your product is 20% faster, right? Or does something completely different, that's the metric. Do, what experiment or research you're going to do over the next week to get smarter about that specific plan or challenge. You're going to talk to an expert. You're going to run a quick experiment. You're going to create a looks like or works like prototype. Whatever it takes to learn and get smarter on that original objective. You're going to study the results, again, within a week. What did we learn as a result of doing that? And then an act, of course, is what are we going to do next about it? Very often it's going to the next cycle. You got smarter, so let's build upon that, and let's go to the next cycle, and you change the plan for the next week based on that to increase your speed of learning. As you're doing these cycles, you're pivoting as you learn to a meaningful, unique idea. This system can be used when yellow cards are developed. So let's say marketing, R&D, and market research has a set of ideas. They want to refine these to get them to a proposal or recommendation to the leadership team. Plan, do, study, act works with that team to very quickly improve them and get to something that's meaningfully unique, where the risk has been lowered significantly. As I also talked about the development process, it can be used in development. So let's say a barrier comes up you didn't anticipate, and you're in the middle of a development plan, right? It's very disruptive. And unfortunately, in a lot of development systems, they come up when they shouldn't be, right? It should have been addressed before it went into development. Plan, do, study, act can help there. Let's say, for example, go back to our relief and stride man, the neck massager. If we took that idea and we ran 8 cycles over 8 weeks, learning and pivoting, where could this lead? Where could this lead? Each week, you take the yellow card and you revise it based on you learn, but the key is to pivot it quickly towards something that is truly meaningful and unique. Where could we get in 8 weeks? You could go a long way. Teams can take something like this and turn it into something that's absolutely amazing in that amount of time. The discipline of meeting weekly and having a specific deliverable does amazing things for a team and their ability to move it forward. Real progress can be made versus sitting on the shelf waiting for a meeting weeks from now with nothing really happening. So if you think about it strategically, and this is general managers and presidents and senior leadership teams love this. We're talking about increasing speed, decreasing risk. So before the actual product is recommended for investment and to go into development, you're addressing those key issues or death threats through Plan, Do, Study, Act. So when it goes into investments to be approved for an investment, you actually have addressed the key issues, you know everything you need to know, and you have virtually 100% confidence that it's going to be successful when it goes into development. So this conceptually of lowering the risk before you're investing weeds out ideas you shouldn't be pursuing. And it opens it up for ideas that are really going to be successful. So a poll, and we're almost finished, is this can all lead, of course, to developing a culture of innovation, like I said earlier. You have a system of innovation, results go up significantly. What percentage of your organization needs complete or unshakable belief in a new innovation system for real culture change to happen?
Looks like many organizations have it pretty high.
It is high.
Yeah, we'll give a few more seconds for a few more of our participants to put in a response, and then we'll share all the results with everyone, but I'm already seeing high.
It's very high, yes. I'm glad we asked this question, Margaret.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I think so 88% said 60 to 100% of the people need to have unshakable belief for a new system for real cultural change, right? So I can see why it's quite daunting to think about creating some type of culture change inside of an organization if you were to introduce a new innovation system, right? Be very challenging. However, let me see here, stop sharing. However, in fact, if you get to 10% of your organization to have unshakable belief, you can dramatically change a culture. This is from an extensive study from Harvard Business Review. We've actually tested this with a number of large corporations where we've been able to change the culture and achieve at least that 10%. That is the tipping point. I know it's far lower than what most people think, but when people typically hear it, their courage and their desire to go down that path increases dramatically. You can change your culture with the right systems and the tools, and they adopt the vocabulary. The most important thing about innovation systems is the mindset that you're going to use that's built into the culture, right? Key is to get early success and to drive it forward, and you can have an impact. Lastly, Stanford University did a 2-year study on a project with innovation engineering and the March of Dimes. It's a fantastic not-for-profit. They came back with a white paper and said most innovation methods don't actually result in innovation solutions. They've seen a lot of them. Innovation engineering went beyond innovation as usual to true breakout innovation. So we're obviously quite proud of this and that validation from Stanford. And the reasons they cited is we share power in the system with the blue cards. Everybody can input, as well as the yellow cards in the inventing approach. We prioritize relationships where everyone contributes and is important advocate for their ideas, as well as the overall output of the project. We leverage diverse perspectives with the power of diversity, with our tools and systems and stimulus. We legitimize all ways of knowing. So it's incredibly important for ideas to become from anywhere. And stimulus mining allows you to do that, where people bring stimulus, people bring ideas. It's not necessarily ideas that are the pet projects of senior management, or they come from one specific discipline within the company. It's more of a democratic approach where the best ideas filter through to the top. And lastly, and very importantly, we prototype early and often. It's incredibly important to develop a works like or looks like prototype during those plan, do, study, act cycles to really bring it to life. I've seen finance people on a team of inventing go develop a prototype of a new way to kill weeds for a packaged goods company out in the parking lot, a finance person. So again, sharing power, legitimize all ways of knowing. That's an example of how ideas can come from anywhere. And by empowering the people on the team with these methods in this system, everyone can contribute to a far greater outcome. Lastly, we talked about create, communicate, and commercialize. If you email me, bruce@eurekainventing.com, I will set up a quick meeting with you or your team, and we can talk through the blue card, which is, of course, for mission and objective, the concept capture card, the yellow card, as well as the 20 questions. And I'll make sure your team understands how to use them and get off to a great start. And I would love to talk to you, and thank you very much for listening and to this session today.
Bruce, thank you. What a great job and what interesting information. We have about 7 minutes left, and I happen to have 7 questions. So it might feel like a lightning round, but let's see if we can get through all the questions that came in. So Mary asks, isn't it often too expensive to provide new systems to employees? That was always the issue at companies I worked for.
Well, it can be, right? And importantly, with innovation engineering, we don't focus on a big software solution. Unfortunately, a lot of solutions are around software platforms, and they're from large, software companies that charge a lot of money. We have a web-enabled system for the tools and such, but that's not the focus of innovation engineering. It's about mindset and coaching and training. We do training. We do blue belt and black belt training for innovation engineering. And our system is meant to be affordable, whether you're a small, medium, or large corporation. So do not hesitate. If you ever want to talk about considering our solution, don't hesitate based on cost.
Great, great response, and great to hear that cost doesn't have to be a barrier. Our next question, as we talk about systems and innovation, what are some of the types of systems in scope? Also, how are these systems generating insights for the C-suite?
Interesting. If I understand it correctly, systems projects inside the company can be ways to reduce costs, right? More creative, innovative solutions. A lot of companies use like lean manufacturing and Six Sigma to address systems inside their companies. The problem with those systems, they're great, but the problem is when they're faced with a barrier, they don't have a creative solution to other than just cut cost. And that's unfortunately what happened to lean, is it got seen as a cost-cutting thing. Innovation engineering will come up with ways to build and have more innovative solutions to address problems. So be cost cutting. If your sales force is having a tough time going to market, it could be management of your process of strategy development or marketing strategy and planning. Any internal system, if your system to hire talent is not productive enough, anything where the results are not predictive and consistently successful, these tools, innovation engineering, can make a difference. The insight to management, I think, if I understand that, it's primarily any part of this process, the output can be shared with management to improve their confidence in what's happening, right? The biggest challenge with management is they typically, after an inventing session, want the results, because they grew up in an era that if you didn't have the idea, as soon as you brainstormed, you didn't have an idea that was worth pursuing. The toughest challenge is to explain to management and to coach them that, no, it's a process of plan, do, study, act, and commercialization. So I'll share an idea now, but in 8 weeks, we're going to come back with something, and it could be dramatically different. And they need to understand that.
Okay, great. I really like this next question. I see that your innovation system can be used by companies that produce products. What about companies that produce services? Can these companies use your innovation system as well?
Absolutely. That's probably about 40% of our projects now are service companies, whether it be banking, professional services, legal firms, you name it. Um, in fact, as the team knows, that marketing services are even more difficult than products at times to make them meaningfully unique. It's a lot harder to make sure you pinpoint things that are meaningfully unique in a service industry because you don't have a physical product. So innovation engineering actually becomes more applicable, even more so to a service company, because driving those differences versus your competitors can be so challenging. So we've done a lot in financial services, a lot with Chase Bank, of course, they're in New York, and done a lot of their work on their website innovation and such. And it absolutely can be very powerful.
Great. All right. So I'm going to just let everyone know that while we are running a little bit short on time to answer all of these questions in an hour, some of you may be, on your lunch and have to get away. We'll stay on the recording to answer these questions, but I'll just quickly thank anyone who has to get going, and remind you to complete the little survey that we have afterward. Give us your ideas for future webinars and your feedback on this one. And remember that we are on Fridays and that we alternate our virtual Lunch and Learn series with our signature leadership series. And we keep in touch with everyone who has registered via email. We'll send out the recording to people that we have valid emails for, and we also post that on the Business Insights section of our website. So for anyone who has to go, please feel free. And Bruce, if you don't mind sticking with me to answer these couple more questions.
That's fine. Sure.
Okay,
Love to.
fantastic. All right. And I see the chat is scrolling with several people saying thank you and so forth. If you have dropped a question into the chat and not put it into the Q&A, would you just copy it over to the Q&A? This is all some of the back end information, but that'll produce a nice report for me of all the questions that we got to, and we can make sure that every question has been addressed. It's harder the way that the chat appears and scrolls through and doesn't save in the same way. So I want to be sure all questions get addressed. Anything that's only in the chat, please try to copy it over to the Q&A box now. So our next question is, do you think the upcoming AI will help to create more meaningful, unique ideas?
It depends. We've actually done a lot of work recently, like a lot of folks on AI. And I think if you use the basic tools, right, companies tend to ask the same questions, right? When they do consumer research, they'll ask the same consumers or different consumers the same questions as their competitor. So if all you do is tap into the world on insights and writing concepts and technology, there's actually some evidence that I've recently read that a lot of same answers will come back to companies, right? But the more you populate your AI search with your own data and intelligence and proprietary sources of data, and bigger companies, of course, have a tremendous wealth of data if they can use that with AI, right? You are more likely to come back with something that could be a real competitive advantage, right? So the source of the information and the data set that you're tapping into makes a huge difference in coming back with things that are proprietary and could be new and different versus your competition. But there's a lot of new ways to use AI where you can have customers record their feelings about a specific product category in like an audio format through a link. And then AI can combine all those interviews instantaneously and develop a summary of the insights and the opportunities moving forward from all those interviews. Or you can do that with employees. You send it out to 500 employees, for example, and have them record a short video where they just talk, and AI can combine it and give you clear direction of where to go next. It's fascinating stuff, and it's moving fast.
Nice. And if people had been on really early for this pre-start of our webinar, Bruce, you and I were talking a little bit about an answer to an AI question today might be very different to an answer for an AI question in 6 months. It's a rapidly evolving technology and field. So,
Yes,
um,
yes.
all right, our next question comes from Jason, and he says, faster is always ideal. However, as we pivot to newer, less commonly used research tools, the lower the chance the customer will align with our research because we've trained them to be used to classic testing like basis. How do we adjust for this?
Great question. I think you have to, well, obviously you have to come up with a tremendous amount of evidence and data. One of the challenges, of course, is if you have a real disruption like EVs, right? EVs are going to take much longer than what some people want or they anticipated, right? On average, we know disruptive innovation takes at least 6 years. So if you have something that's truly disruptive, and you know that it takes time for them to adopt based on risk profile, or again, what you've trained them to do, you may want to maybe not take such a leap and be more singularly focused and, as we say, do one thing great. So might a better strategy be to add an enhancement that's valuable, that you know that they will accept and adopt in a reasonable amount of time, versus leaping to something that's just too much risk for them to bear in one leap. And I hope that answers the question.
All right. Our next question is, what are the steps needed? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. What are the steps, I guess this means, that need to be followed to avoid bottleneck of innovation minds? And it might be mindset.
So if I'm interpreting that to be, if you have a group of people and you don't believe they're being open to new ideas and new approaches, it actually makes it even more important, because that actually defines a lot of corporate teams. Probably better said, it often will define part of the team that participates. Usually you have a mix of people that are really eager and open-minded. It's even more important to have a system and tools and a process you're following, like innovation engineering, because there's less room for them to worry, to complain, to state things that they think are barriers to the approach. So you go through the process, you give them less time and room for being a bottleneck. If they don't want to be in the room, then they're not in the room. And you work through those ideas in development. And that's one of the reasons why we immediately recommend that you do plan, do, study, act to start to address the fear. The fear. The faster you do that, and you come back with a data point that says, you know what, this hose thing to massage your neck when you walk, that actually has some merit, because there's some other reason why that you did research on that proved it. That starts to reduce that bottleneck and that person that's the naysayer, as soon as you start to get that information. Without that, they'll just kill your ideas and you'll never go anywhere.
I think this next question was actually probably related to the previous one, because the same person says, does a continuous follow-up with the team working on innovation help or create problems? What's the right approach in projects?
So I'm kind of reading into that person may be managing that team, right? I think if you're managing an innovation team, that's one of the reasons why the depth of thinking of the blue card on the mission and the objective, that's when that more senior people need to put a lot of energy into that, right? And really agree on the mission for the team. Unfortunately, a lot of times today, they don't put much time into it, not necessarily always their fault, right? The team may not have engaged enough. If they don't put enough time into it, of course, they're going to vote and make a comment later, and later is disruptive. So the more energy to manage the team up front to agree on the mission, and then have regular checkpoints and understanding the system they're using is incredibly important for a leader. So if you don't understand their system, they may come back and tell you how they're doing it and may be very confusing for you. So you need to understand the process and system they're using. In the case of innovation engineering, if there's like 8 weeks of fail fast, fail cheap cycles, you might have an interaction with the senior leader, upon the blue card, when it's invented, maybe 4 weeks later, after 4 cycles for an update, and then maybe 4 cycles later, when they may be to the point where you can move the idea forward. So very disciplined, and the team knows exactly when you're going to interact with them. That's the most successful. It also empowers the team that they don't have to look over their shoulder every day, because you're not looking for an update every day.
Fantastic. Now, this may be one of those mom doesn't pick favorite children type of questions, but Lisa asks, which companies are best at innovation in the consumer packaged goods space, in your opinion?
Great question. Procter Gamble is Johnson & Johnson. I've worked for them both. Certainly, Coca-Cola. I would also, Unilever to a great extent. They've done a great job. Reckitt which is based also in New Jersey and overseas. Reckitt's very creative. We've done some projects with them as well recently. I'm sure I'm leaving a lot out, but the smaller to medium-sized companies have the biggest opportunity with an innovation system as a way to be more productive and be more impactful because they have fewer resources. So if you want to compete you're competing against one of those big multinationals in a CPG category, using an innovation system becomes incredibly important to focus your resources and make it as productive as possible. And you must introduce meaningful, unique ideas because you don't have enough marketing money. So it flips that whole mindset. Well, we don't have enough marketing money. Well, then do something that's a lot more meaningful, unique, and I guarantee you will break through and you can compete against the big guys. And I've seen it happen, and it can happen. And sometimes some coaching and some help externally can make a big difference.
Great. And we'll close out with this last question. We've talked a lot about, consumer product, but this person asks, do you see a fundamental difference in innovation when analyzing the life science industry?
Not tremendously. I think having worked on pharmaceutical and over-the-counter development, that the big difference, of course, is the amount of time to do the research, right? To do the research can, obviously, in the case of RX drugs, can be years. Over the counter typically isn't quite as long, but it makes it really important, given the investment, that you're pointing the resources in development towards a specific outcome, potentially, or benefit, right, to your customer. When that can be defined, and you can use tools to direct that work and direct the R&D work, even though it may take years to do it. So think of it almost as, in the middle of the plan, do, study, act cycles, there's this long period of development that needs to happen, right? Versus if you work on a carbonated soft drink, that's only a few months. In the case of a life science company, it's a lot longer, but it becomes incredibly important that there's some real direction, some focus, a concept behind that development work, if it's at all possible, right? It becomes incredibly important to have that discipline up front. A lot of development work in those companies is done without that necessarily, right? You're trying to solve a health issue. The more you can integrate a consumer-facing approach with the yellow card to develop a strong concept to drive the process, the more productive it can become.
Okay, I didn't mean to, but I lied. We got another question in that is actually a really good closer. With all of the good information that's been shared, how does a company get started with all of this?
Well, they reach out to me and I'd be glad to share our system, right? You know, it'd be fun to share our system. I love to talk about this, as you can tell. And you start with, it can start with coaching. We often do coaching sessions. In fact, we've done virtual coaching sessions since the pandemic, where the results in the coaching and training has been higher than in person, believe it or not. So it can be done virtually. It's like a one-day training on innovation engineering, blue belt training. So some companies will start with that training. Other companies will start with, obviously, a deep dive and understanding how it would specifically work inside of their company with a conversation and a dialogue to understand that. When we engage, we're not looking to get any commitment for a long-term system, right? You got to manage risk. That's what we teach. What we love to do is to take one of your challenging objectives, set like a 90-day or 120-day timeline, and do a test project where people learn the innovation engineering tools. And with getting a superior result, most of the time it catches the management's attention and they want more. And we all know that the most important thing is to show with innovation engineering, an innovation system, it made a material difference in our results versus without it. And that's the most powerful way. And again, it starts to move towards getting up to that 10% that have unshakable belief that an innovation system can make a real difference in the company. And then we like to repeat that, going after your most important objectives to the point you get to a tipping point where people believe, they really believe that it can make a real difference in their results.
Fantastic. And like I said, I thought that was a great way to close things out. So, Bruce, I want to thank you for more than the amount of time that we had planned together and for helping all of us to better understand the path toward success is paved with innovation. Thanks to our audience. I gave an abbreviated version of my closing earlier, but the enthusiastic participation in our polls, chat, and Q&A definitely enhanced the dialogue for today for sure. Our webinars are on Fridays and we'll be in touch. And Bruce, actually, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down to the very last slide, so especially anybody who happens to be watching this exclusively as a recording will see how they can, there you go, how they can get to see our previous recordings and our forthcoming schedule. But please complete a very brief survey so we have feedback on this webinar and ideas for future ones. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.